Greetings, everyone. This is the AfterThoughts. We're talking about the sermon, and today Nick preached on Psalm 149. This is the last of our Psalm series. This is we're going into Lord's Supper next week, and so great segue out. And so it's the AfterThoughts, things we think about with the sermon. So here's what you had no idea of. Okay, so long story, not so long. Over the weekend, I was reading a book. I've got several books on virtue I'm going through, and we're working with an addiction ministry, helping them out. So I have a book on, it's called Addiction and Virtue. And I'd read about the first half of the book, and it's the philosophy behind what addiction is and these kinds of things. And the second half of the book, I was like, well, maybe there's not going to be really anything, like this will be quick. So I read the whole second half of the book yesterday on Saturday. So it's about 100 pages where I thought, meh, but no. Still had to pull out the highlighter. So he coordinates the idea of addiction almost as a counterfeit form of worship. And so the sermon today is talking about, praising what gets you excited, what draws you. And so that's why my mind immediately went to this material I have just read, because he frames the whole concept of addiction. It tends to bring order in people's lives, and they live for it. Like they wake up thinking about it. It's what drives them. It's, anything you do, that's part of it. You're going to have friends. Like he's using alcoholism. He's like, you're going to have friends. You're going to have a drink. You're sad. You're going to do this. You're lonely. Like and so he compares it to almost this, he calls it a counterfeit worship, because there's a devotion. There's, like even the people, like if they want to stop, they can't, this language that's used. And he compares it specifically with the church and demonstrating like, we don't have anything like this. Like this is not how we approach God. Mm-hmm. This is not how we approach our faith. And so this whole idea of, again, he described in the book the idea of worship, this devotion, this adoration, this longing that your whole life is sort of wrapped around this thing. And that, I think, fits, because if we think about people who worship their cars, we talk about what gets us excited, everything revolves around that. This is the conversation I used to have as a youth pastor, telling parents, if everything revolves around sports, you worship sports. Mm-hmm. Like, if you even use that language, that's what you're doing, because your whole life, your work schedules, your vacations, your finances, everything is geared towards making that happen. So this is the conversation I had. I had this conversation with Stacy probably like 10 o'clock last night. I was like, let me tell you what I've been reading. Like, I was all excited. I was like, these ideas, I've never thought about them. And so here you come preaching this. And I'm like, it was so timely, because again, and you're hitting on these same kinds of things. Like, why is it that we dance and we bring out these instruments, we do these things where there's this almost a compulsion. It's what draws us. And you made the comment, do we give God the same energy as we give to and my words, the hobbies, the activities to which we devote ourselves? And I marked that word because that was a word that kind of came up. So I just think it's cool, like after kind of having read this, and you connected it in with humility as well, that, part of the reason we don't do this is because we lack humility. We have this pride. And in the book, it did this same kind of thing. It's that many people who have this high moral compass are the ones who are actually most likely to be self-deceivers, because they want to keep themselves straight in their mind, and they want to justify everything. And I just had a lot of fun. Like, I had a whole different background listening to this. And so I think those kinds of ideas, and again, it's you did a really good job making it concrete. If everyone else in the room is stupid, it's you that has the problem. Mm-hmm. So what is it? And again, now I know we come to like the last of the Psalms. We had so many, but what drew you to this Psalm? Because when you look at Psalm 148 and you look at Psalm 150, there's similarities there. What drew you specifically into this one?
Where it draws onto worship going directly into the concrete, when it talks about holding the double-edged sword, preparing yourself for war, preparing yourself for battle. I just think that when we look at Jesus, when we look at the church, when we look at the spiritual warfare in front of us, we treat it like we're, playing with Nerf swords. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it just seems so, people seem so apathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just got me stoked. I just got excited about it when I was reading it, and I was just like, when I sing, I raise my hands. Like I know it's like such a small thing, but when I sing, I raise my hands. I got saved in a Pentecostal church, so that's kind of how I was taught that's how we sing. But then I started going to Baptist churches, and I stopped doing it because we just don't do that.
Mm.
And then I do it here, and I look around, and I'm curious about it. I'm curious as to why we don't show any excitement or emotion. And it boggles my mind, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
So I chose this I talked about it a couple weeks ago, and it's made no effect whatsoever. Like there's no change whatsoever. And it boggles I don't understand it. I can't figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I can't figure out why we don't get excited for this moment to worship next to our brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's pretty much why it was so stuck out in my head, is that, like, Scripture tells us over and over,
mm-hmm.
this is a joyful thing, and we don't do it. And I've been to other churches where that's about all you get is that joy. And it's like, but then the preaching on the tail end is like, what just happened? Like, that was
mm-hmm.
super motivating. Can't we have a church that has strong exegetical preaching, but yet we're still excited to serve, and without play manipulative games of trying to, use the right hurts or the right lead ups, or with all the without all the manipulation. And so that's why I chose it. I'm just trying to figure it out. Like, I don't understand it.
I think it was a couple of weeks ago. I found myself teaching a class I didn't normally teach here at the church, and I had to step in, and there was, again, no excitement. No, like, we might as well not even be here. Mm-hmm. And I feel like even as a pastor, there's been times when I was preaching in a congregation and I felt the same kind of thing. Like,
mm-hmm.
like, why did we show up today? Like, are we even happy about being here? I think there's an element. I think some people, they're not. I think one of the, and this goes back again to the book that I was reading, the concept of addiction, these compulsions. I think some people just compulsively come to church. There's almost a sense like they can't stop because they feel bad.
Well, I feel like there's some people that are there, right? But I don't want to. But I know a lot of people who aren't doing that. Who that's not. But they get here, and it's. And I'm gonna use the singing as the example. They sing, and I've never, like, they look like a board standing there. Like, they're as stiff can be, and there's just no excitement. And I'm like, Scripture tells us to be excited. Like, why are we not doing it?
But follow me with this. So in my case, the number of years I've been at churches where it was those stiff unexcitement, you're almost trained in how to do that. You're building vices in that sense.
Yeah.
You're building these habits that the whole idea, I still remember the first youth camp I was at, and I forced myself to raise my hands, and just how uncomfortable that was, because it goes back to that training. My grandmother was one of those that, it's ungodly to clap at church. Like, she just genuinely believed, right? Like, you're just worldly.
Crazy.
Okay. So being trained in that, you again, and doing this for years, if not decades. So our church, we have a lot of people who've come in, joined in last few years, but they're coming from all these different backgrounds. But I think that might be one of those common things. And for the longest, particularly in Baptist circles, that was the mode of operation.
Right.
And so breaking that habit, building those new habits, there is some element of going back to what we teach with virtue. You have to see it. You have to catch it. So having the people, when you see them in their excitement, you were pointing out, look at the kids, look at the excitement that's here. Don't try to squish them. Try to learn how to channel some of this. I think that is the first step. And again, we have the clear mandates in Scripture. But again, I think, and I mentioned this last week, I think sometimes we just don't believe it. Like, we read it, but,
right.
Well, that's what they did back then. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I didn't think about this till just now. We've got, and I know a lot of dudes, a lot of men who are ready, prepared to take the double-edged sword and just do what's necessary. But the whole first part of that psalm is just ignored because they're just like, okay, I'll take the sword. You want me to dance? Nah, I'm not dancing for Jesus.
Right.
You want me to play a tambourine? Nah, I'm not making no noise. I will sing. My mouth will move.
And that goes back to that humility aspect, which is not thinking. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. And I think we're so self-conscious.
Yeah.
And you made this comment, that salvation is not possible without humility. Going back to verses 4-6, he adorns the humble with salvation. And that is when you mention that, I'm like, that is what keeps so many people, because even the number of people I know who, we don't make it a coming down front, for example, doesn't make you saved, but that's the reason people would give for not getting saved, because they didn't want to have to stand in front of people. And I'm like, we have an interesting situation here, because again, it's like, well, but if you're not even willing to stand in front of people, what's going on? What's the deeper root that's happening?
My wife today said that I danced more in today's sermon than I have our entire marriage.
I will say, because since you called us out, because we were laughing a little bit more probably than most people, Stacy and I, but the reason was because
my mom was cracking jokes.
Yes, I could hear your family behind us, and I was listening to them. Like when you would start dancing, I heard your mom go, "Stop it!" It was great. It was so funny.
It's kind of perfect.
It was awesome.
Stifling my joy. But
there's an element of again, it's unusual.
Well, I bring it up, and I don't do that. I did it today to truly just try to bring. I'm embarrassed about it. Don't absolutely, but there's either got to be a moment when you got to get past that, or not. So yeah.
So the only other thing I mentioned is you talk about live the calling out, and my mind went to the verses, which it's such a good segue because we're going to be going to Thessalonians next. I think Thessalonians is one of the 3 key places that talks about live worthy of the calling with which you've been called. There's almost a word for word repetition between Ephesians, Thessalonians, and maybe Colossians, I think, where Paul repeats this. And there is this sense in living out, we think of just following the rules. We think of what does it mean to live worthy. We think of, not doing the things we're not supposed to do and doing the service. But, has this calling impacted us so much? Do we respond? Have we given that kind of response? Or has it been stifled over time? Have we allowed it? And now we need to revive that in a sense over time. So it gives us something to think about, and, leaving off with, to care about and this calling, and that we've been called to something more than, I think, particularly Baptists are called the frozen chosen.
The frozen chosen. I love it.
I
don't know if I've heard that, but it fits.
Yep, it just and I've encountered that, and not just Baptists, but I know other denominations can be that way. But I think it is worth noting at the end, it's not just about complete emotivism and just going wild.
Right.
Again, that language of virtue is so good. It's
about having. I don't want to use the passion because you just brought up virtue, and it's a different type of passion. But it's about having a passionate feeling, actually showing the emotion that is true. Do you the
genuineness?
Yeah, it's got to be genuine. And if genuinely you are reserved and have absolutely no movement, then Scripture is telling you there needs to be more there.
It's the same thing because you brought up about your wife, and there's a sense that you can be defective in your relationship, you can be deficient. I mean, I'm not saying you are. I'm saying if you were just like, hey, love you.
Okay.
Your illustration.
Let's be clear. You said you brought up your wife and you can be defective. Like, let's just make sure we're clear on what you're talking about.
I mean, hypothetically, a person can be defective and like, oh, hey, I love you. But you also have on the other extreme, the utter clinginess that's destructive.
Sure.
So again, I think in our human relationships, because I had written this in here, how is it that we approach our human relationships? Because there might be an element, complete hypothesizing on this, there might be an element that if we are just not engaged with other people, that might be a reason why when it comes to God, we're not engaged. Because since we're, in a sense, defective with these relationships that we're so concrete with,
right,
it's going to be that much harder the one we can't see. So a lot of good thoughts, a lot of good things. And, the idea that we're going to have a church field trip to medieval times, love it.
We are not.
Love it. So
we are not. I'm not going to watch a bunch of dudes dress up and LARP.
You. I appreciate the sermon, and we'll catch you next time.